Fuck. Neuronymous.
Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome. Hey, my fellow neurotics, this is Hal with another episode of Neuronymous. I hope all of you had a great week. It's Friday night, and this week was it was heavy. I had a meltdown. That was kind of cool. That was kind of fun. Just about, depression's a bitch, man. Like, I don't even know where to begin. Like, it's just like I was fine, and then I wasn't, and then I just wanted to curl up in a ball in the fetal position, and, depression sucks. And here's the thing. If you're depressed, okay, there's nothing wrong with who you are, okay? Sometimes I get depressed, and that's okay. It's this is a safe place, and I trust you guys when I talk to you about my depression. So anyway, fun week of meltdowns and ups and downs and bipolar and gosh. So anyway,
Okay, we're bored.
oh, and that is my wife Amanda, who will be gosh, you're like elusive. Like I've talked to you about you so many times in my podcast. You're just like this like mythical being. You're like
I'm not here for you today, babe.
you're like a Bigfoot. I've talked to you up so much, but you're like with less. Oh, she's giving me the finger with less Sasquatch qualities.
Really? That's what you're gonna go with?
That's what I'm going with.
You're gonna go with I'm Bigfoot.
Well, your feet are. You have great feet. All right, so you have wonderful feet. I love your feet.
You should just stop it.
Anyway, so my wife is actually an amazing. What she does is just absolutely amazing. I compared to what I do, which is work for the monolith, customer service. Like I can't. What she does is so much more honorable and amazing and just helpful to just all humanity. Sometimes it makes me cry. She is an occupational therapist, and it's funny whenever I tell people that she's an occupational therapist, whenever I brag about her, the most common thing I get is, "Oh, so she helps people find jobs?" I'm like, "No, you fuckheads. She helps people learn how to live again and do stuff, life stuff, that they can't do on their own." So, what is as Amanda, what is the most common thing you get when you tell people what you do?
So typically, you're like, "Oh, I'm an occupational therapist," and people are like, "Oh," and this puzzled look comes across their face, and then you're like, we are similar to physical therapists, and that's the point where they usually go, "Oh, but you work with everything from the waist up, and PTs work with everything from the waist down."
Fucking idiots.
No, sir. So, an occupational therapist, in my explanation, well, first I could give you the American Occupational Therapy Association definition of OT, and you'll probably just go with what? OT is the only profession that helps people across the lifespan to do the things they want and need to do through the therapeutic use of daily activities or occupations. Occupational therapy practitioners enable people of all ages to live life to its fullest by helping them promote health and prevent or live better with injury, illness, or disability. Tells you a whole lot, doesn't it? No. So what I usually say is an occupation is any task that any person does from infancy to death that you need to be able to do by yourself to live. and live independently and happily. And that's like, whoa, that covers a lot.
God, you're... Oh, God,
that covers a lot. So...
God, you're remarkable.
I know. Getting dressed in the morning, OT helps. Brushing your teeth in the morning, OT helps. Making your breakfast in the morning, OT can help. Knowing how to play nicely with your other preschool mates, OT can help.
Wiping your butt. I remember she talked about peanut butter.
Yep. So
I like peanut butter. Peanut butter is awesome.
At my particular clinic for a while, I was jokingly dubbed the poop specialist because I frequently had gotten the kids that were referred for different variety of needs, whether they have digestive issues, whether they have self-care issues, doing the hygiene aspect, whether
she's actually talking about me right now.
Yeah, medical diagnoses that's causing some issues. Anyways, so we literally teach people how to take care of those bathroom functions sometimes, but we also help with things like handwriting and knowing how to play a game and taking turns with your friends. And, everything that you do every day can almost fall under the umbrella of OT.
Jeez, wow. And that's again, that's just, I didn't know all of that stuff. I mean, I know the gist of it, but the thing is, like, when I try to explain it, it's, I just sound like an idiot, but that's usually the case with most things. But so anyway, let's rewind. Well, actually, before we rewind, let's talk about something called sensory processing disorder, SPD.
Sorry.
Did
you want to go somewhere else before we started doing that?
No. Talk about it. I want to hear it.
Sorry. So it's really hard for me as his wife to not let his show happen organically here tonight, because I'm not just a guest. I'm not a guest. I'm your freaking wife. So, I kind of want to take the handle and be like, nope, this is where we're going. Nope, that's where we're going.
So basically my wife is a control freak, but that's okay.
That's okay. We'll get to that.
I've talked about that in, it was a perfect storm.
Shut up, I'm talking. No.
When we met, I needed to be controlled and she needed to control somebody. So it was just like, as Forrest Gump would say, we got together like peas and carrots.
So anyways,
yes,
to get to the good stuff.
Continue. Yes.
Before we get to our real guest, because I'm just kind of the sideshow here tonight. So that's what OT is, occupational therapy. And he wanted to introduce me with all the letters behind my name. He was like, what's that official thing you sign behind your name? And I was like, what, the MOTR/L? Yeah, that's going to mean nothing to nobody. It's not like I have a PhD. But anyways, so...
I feel like you do sometimes.
Well, that's because in comparison to you, I do.
It's true. I did graduate from the University of No Opportunity. Sorry, Dr. Allen. It was a complete joke.
Anyway, shut up already.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the major things that I work with as OT is something called sensory processing disorder. So you're like, oh, well, what's that? Gene Ears, and I have to give credit where credit is due, was a famous OT and psychologist that developed the entire explanation of sensory processing disorder. So I'm going to read an explanation, then I'm going to give you my explanation because it's better anyways, right? Sensory processing refers to the way the nervous system receives messages from the senses and turns them into responses. For those with sensory processing disorder, sensory information goes into the brain but does not get organized into appropriate responses. Those with SPD perceive and or respond to sensory information differently than most other people. Unlike people who have impaired sight or hearing, those with SPD do detect the sensory information. However, the sensory information gets mixed up in their brain, and therefore the responses are inappropriate in the context in which they find themselves. And you're all thinking, well, is that I hate everybody, so that's everybody I hate, right? Or, if we want to be a sexist women, we could say, well, so all men have SPD then? That's what you're telling me?
I do hate everybody.
And if you're, a sexist male, you're probably thinking, oh, that's what's wrong with my wife, right? So no, to put that into better terms for you, Hal would never say such a thing.
No, absolutely not.
So let's take pain tolerance here, okay? So like person with typical pain tolerance, they bump into something, they go, oh, that was uncomfortable. You might get an ow, but then realize that it really doesn't hurt all that bad. I've worked with children who have face planted off of the cement stairs onto the road in front of them, gashed their head open, were bleeding profusely, had to be forcibly taken to the ER, and while the doctor was stitching up their head, looked at mom and asked, so when do I get to go back to preschool?
The fuck?
That's a kid with sensory processing disorder.
Oh.
So he gets a wound, and he has no conception of how much it actually hurts or what kind of danger he's actually in, right?
Right. So, like, to a certain extent, it's almost like, I remember there's an episode of, like, Grey's Anatomy. Yeah, I'm talking about Grey's Anatomy, where, like, this kid was, like, could get hit in, maybe it was House, I don't know, where, he get hit, cut, or, like, put needles in them, and it had no bearing on them. He just was just like, oh.
Partially, yes.
Yeah?
So
I'm kind of getting it.
Okay, to pick on myself, for example, because I was a very misunderstood child, and going to OT school was like, oh, that's what was wrong with me. I have a lot.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. OT school explained it all. So, like, I have a lot of auditory sensitivities. So I would go to, like, sleepovers at friends' house, and there was one in particular. And if they had a ticking clock, I would have a total meltdown. Complete, total, utter meltdown. Because the ticking of the clock drove me insane. And no one understood why I wanted the clock to be, like, taken apart or, like, the battery thrown away. Or, like, the old tube TVs, it's not a problem with the new ones, but old tube TVs make this really high-pitched noise that I can hear and most people can't. The buzzing of, like, fluorescent lights drives me insane.
You should see her reaction when I start talking.
Well, that's beside the point. But speaking of that, if he's breathing too loudly when I'm trying to fall asleep, I get real angry.
She does. She's hit me a few times.
That's for other reasons. But, so that's like auditory sensitivity. Another one, picking on myself too, is like I have a really poor sense of proprioception. So that is the sense of like, so we have light touch receptors. So when you tickle someone, you feel that, right? Or like if you touch a feather or the wind blows your hair, something like that. That's light touch. And then you have deep touch receptors, and that's like when you smack something, right?
Oh my God.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't have as sensitive deep touch receptors as others, so it takes a lot more input to give my brain the information that it takes to give Hal input. So going back to the pain thing, right? Hal bumps his knee on the table and he's like, ow, motherfucker! And like sits down and like probably thinks about getting an ice pack. And, like... It's
true, I'm a big pussy, is basically what she's saying.
Right. And I've learned so that he feels loved. Whenever I hear him do that, I go, oh, are you okay, honey? But I really don't care one bit because I know he's fine. He didn't know that. This is fun watching him realize that.
My marriage has been a lie. My God.
But where I am like, I hit myself and I'm like, okay, keep going. Or like last night, Hal's like, where'd you get that ugly bruise on your leg? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I didn't even know I had it.
It was a beautiful bruise, honey. It was actually very beautiful.
That's sensory processing. Okay, this is what you gave me a mic and I wouldn't shut up. You knew this was going to happen.
No, it's roll with it.
So
this is what my show's about.
What in God's name does OT have to do with sensory processing disorder?
Yes.
Right?
Yes. What does it? Yeah. Just keep talking.
So, kids and people with sensory processing disorder don't have typical reactions to typical environments, peoples, places, things, activities, right?
Yeah.
So, trying to think of something. Nope, that was different.
My wife, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, okay, here's one. Sorry. It's Friday. I've been working 5 days this week, and I've been doing all week. Okay. So how does it, I'm just going to go with kids because that's what I do. I work with kids. So a kid with hypersensitivity to tactile information, you're like, oh, big whoop. They don't like to get messy. They don't like hugs. Like, what's the big deal? Well, how about the child that literally has 2 dresses, 1 pair of pants, a t-shirt wear because they're so sensitive? Those 7 items of clothing in the entire household is all they will wear. And if you try and put different clothing on them, they will melt down and have a tantrum for 3 hours. Not because they're naughty, but because it literally, the feeling of something else makes their skin crawl. So OT comes in and
Sort of like when I want to wear my shorts and like they need to get washed and that's the only thing my bathrobe. Like I can't go anywhere without my bathrobe now. And it like
that's just because you're lazy.
And plus I like to look like the dude from The Big Lebowski. So.
It is. And ever since you told me that, that's all I see. And I'm like, I'm not married to the Big Lebowski dude, okay?
That's just like your opinion, man.
Like, you're way shorter than him. Anyways. Clothing. Kids. So, a kid can't really function when they only wear that much clothes. So, or they have those many items. So, OT comes in and we help them learn how to better tolerate things that drive them nuts and be more empathetic towards other people, blah, 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 blah. I have to shut up and move on here, okay? So that didn't mean you get to talk.
Yeah, it does actually. So let's rewind back to February. So Amanda went to this, what would you call it?
They're called continuing education.
Yes, it was like a lecture basically.
Lectures or seminars.
And she met, the person that was speaking, who is also going to be our amazing guest, is a world-renowned occupational therapist named Kim Barthel. And she deals specifically with PTSD. And
yes, but specifically she deals with trauma and sensory processing. She deals with a lot of things, but trauma, sensory processing disorder, and the NDT technique are her specialties.
Okay, yeah, so that's way more than I thought, and that's why you're here, and you're the monitor.
See, the problem is I took the notes, and he's trying to look at the notes, figuring out where the interview goes next.
I'm looking at these notes, and they look like fucking hieroglyphics.
So,
I don't even think I pronounce hieroglyphics
real
correctly.
Quick, before I really have to shut up to really listen to the most amazing OT I've ever heard of or listened to in my life. Trauma. We all know what trauma is, right? There's acute trauma. Hal hitting his knee on the table.
It's pretty cute.
Crying, getting an ice pack. You get a paper cut. It happens quickly. It doesn't last very long. You get over it. Most people are familiar with PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder. So when trauma is so huge that it doesn't just get resolved quickly, or more frequently when trauma happens over and over and over again, people can't move past it. And then things that trigger that trauma cause a stress reaction. So it was first found in soldiers that came back from war, and it was called shell shock originally. So people that have been in war, for example, and this is just an example, and it's a huge generalization. So don't take it like literally. It's a stereotype. Don't. So like, for example, many people that went to war over in Afghanistan hate the 4th of July because the sound of fireworks sets off their stress reaction to what it sounded like hearing gunshots in the war.
Same thing with like dogs too, right? Like
it can be, yeah it can be. So, but Jasper, he's a whole nother podcast.
Well, no, I remember I know there are a lot of Somalis that are afraid of dogs based on things that I've read, that they were chased by dogs.
See, I was under a different impression of as to why.
Yeah, no, I've read something. I read part of a book by David Eggers called "What Is the What?" I think is what it's called.
I remember you talking about that one.
And and it's So all right, okay, yep, all right.
Okay, so we know what trauma is. We understand acute trauma. We understand post-traumatic stress disorder. However, there are 3 really big, and they're pretty new, kinds of trauma. And there's one called developmental trauma, there's epigenetic trauma, and there's intergenerational trauma. I'm going to let Kim explain that more, but that sounds really cool, doesn't it?
It does. What blew you...
Sorry.
What blew you away, though? About all this?
What blew me away about Kim Barthel?
Yeah.
So I think the one that sticks with me the most was the example of... So Kim Barthel specializes in how does sensory processing skills and disorders relate back to trauma that people have. So she talks about a client of hers who experienced a lot of trauma at a very young age, and he was an impressively amazing hockey player. And I'm not going to say his name because I'm going to let her do that because it's not my thing or my piece, I guess. Well, they have a book together, Theo Fleury. Anyways, and so he was a great hockey player. And kids and adults and people that go through prolonged stages of trauma, like he did, or like I did maybe, have really good peripheral vision. So they see everything outside of themselves, because when you're growing up in trauma, you have to know where the next hit is coming from, or the next item that's being thrown at your head, or you might need to know where the next piece of food is going to be because there's 5 of you in the house that need to eat that piece of food. So your peripheral vision and what you see in your periphery is heightened hugely, right? And so for many of those people also, they have very poor central vision, which is what's right in front of us. Part of that being because they never have a chance to focus on anything in front of themselves, like books and puzzles and toys, but also because in that way of growing up, they have no sense of self. They are not important.
Damn.
So, for example, Theo Fleury made an amazing hockey player because he saw all the players in the hockey team coming at him on the ice. He knew where the puck was. He knew where the coach was. He knew where the hockey sticks were. He knew where everything was because of that ability, right? But the trauma screwed him up as a human being, okay? Likewise with children, a lot of children that I see who have gone through trauma, whether it's domestic abuse, medical trauma, whatever, a lot of them, for example, I'm seeing several right now that they have reading deficits and handwriting deficits because they cannot focus on the piece of paper in front of them. And the attention deficit disorder that we see so highly prevalent in them is because their peripheral vision is attuned. So every time someone walks in the room or every time you hear a noise, you turn your head and you stop attending to what you're looking at in front of you.
Damn.
So anyways, I'm going to shut up now.
All right, so let's do this shit, and let's bring on Kim Barthel. Hi.
Hello.
Good evening. How are you?
Good. Hello, Amanda and Hal. How are you guys?
Good.
We're doing great. Thank you. Yes. Amanda's told me so much about you, and now I just feel completely out of my depth. But that's why she's here. So, all right. So we were talking about.
I gave a little intro on OT and sensory and trauma. So, because I attended your workshop in February.
I remember you, Amanda.
Probably.
Minneapolis.
Yes, because I came up to you halfway through the workshop and I said, so how are you going to fix me and my husband? I told you that Hal had Guillain-Barré when he was 7 and was paralyzed from the neck down and went through a lot. And then many of the things his mother would do would be to just leave him and abandon him when he wouldn't do things like physical therapy. And so I always joke that his mom ruined him.
Yeah, I love my mom, but she takes, think of the typical neurotic Jewish mother and times that by like a gazillion. and then you have my mom. Yeah, like like my mom would, I'd be in the hospital, and my mom would basically be like, she told me like one night, like to don't eat the chicken skin because it's bad for you, and I ate it when she was away, and then she basically screamed at me and basically threatened to leave me and never come back, and I basically had the pleasure of watching her walk away, and like, under the impression that she wasn't coming back. And then a lot of the times, when I finally got home, after, becoming outpatient, a lot of the times she would, they threaten to put me into Boys Town. Are you familiar with Boys Town?
Yes.
Yeah. So that was fun. So, so there was a lot of trauma. I mean, she was very, very, at one point she threatened to put my head through a wall, because somebody sat on one of my casts. I'm not trying to bash my mom. I'm just trying to explain some of the trauma.
You've got a little bit of trauma.
Yeah, a little bit of trauma throughout my life. And
then me.
And then there's Amanda.
Adult child of an alcoholic with severe depression.
Yeah.
And I think what really got me is when you were talking about the different personality types and their strategies, and how I think, if I remember correctly, Hal's a B or a C, and I'm type A, and so a lot of what we do clashes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. I was wondering, because once upon a time you talked about, I've got lots to say about.
Oh, good.
Doing a podcast. Is that what? Are we going to do that here?
Yeah.
Or are we just having a conversation? This is a podcast.
Yeah.
So he records it, and then we'll post it when we're done.
Awesome.
And you can say whatever the fuck you want.
Okay.
He goes, "Can I swear?" And I said, "Well, she did at the seminar."
One of the interesting things about developmental trauma is that the human brain, is hugely sensitive to separation.
Right.
Cues of disconnect. And when you are a child, your brain is life-threatening. When your caregiver creates a sense of disconnect, especially when you're in a place like a hospital,
Yeah.
where your brain is already oriented to fear and danger.
Mm-hmm.
So a disconnect or a separation cue under those conditions would set you up in a circuit of absolute insecurity, trusting that relationships would not survive.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah. Yeah, like I for like the longest time I'm still very insecure. I'm never really comfortable. I have like a really huge fear of people leaving, you know what I mean? Like, for instance, I have this fear that Amanda's going to leave at some point, that everybody's just going to leave me. And I think it all stems back to those episodes, I guess that's what you could call them, or episodes where, I was threatened to be sent away or told. Yeah. So, I mean, that makes complete sense. I mean, even for a long time, like if people tried giving me, even giving me hugs, I would just be like, "You're fake. You're just gonna leave me." Like you don't even. Why are you even touching me? Because I didn't even think I was worth. I didn't even. I didn't like being touched because I didn't think I was worth being touched. And if they did do it, it was just because out of like just wanting to
Duty.
Yeah, exactly, duty. Yeah.
And what I think is so interesting that no one on the podcast can see right now is, as he's talking about it, his shoulders are scrunched up and he's backing away from the computer screen just at like the thought of being.
Well, she's Canadian, so
Oh.
I'm just kidding.
I love it.
I won't hold it against you. I promise. I'm just kidding.
Okay, good. I am curious about your mom's trauma, because transgenerational has
Mm-hmm.
a lot to do with these patterns
Yeah.
of behavior across time.
Yeah.
And so, what do you know about your mom's experience?
Her mom. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Well,
My mom I remember my mom telling me like that her mom once said, "I love you, but I don't like you." Her parents were constantly fighting. I once watched my grandfather in an argument with my grandma, like banging, and he started literally banging his head against the wall. So like that, and like my grandparents were, just constantly at each other's throats, and then they, like they just weren't. Like, they were just shitty people to my mom.
the story that always has stuck out to me is the one where, with the one your grandma said that no one.
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah.
How does that go?
Okay, so my aunt wanted to take me to a Renaissance fair, yeah? And so my mom was like, "Oh, no, somebody might kidnap him. I don't trust these." And then my grandma says, "Why would anybody want to kidnap a handicapped kid?" So it's like shit like that. Like,
His mom has a long-standing history of eating disorders too. I think.
Yep.
So
Yeah. That is true. So
Were your grandparents first generation American or second generation?
they were second generation. Yeah.
And where did they come from?
I think they were from Flint, Michigan.
Oh, well, from before that.
Oh, before that, I think my nationality is like a cross between Russian and Canadian. So
Jewish though.
Jewish, yeah,
Yes.
very
So
Jewish.
Did they come to the United States from Europe?
I wouldn't feel comfortable answering that because I don't know the answer to it. You know what I mean? Like, but I know that their full name when they came off the ships was Sinelnikov. So, and then they got shortened to Senel. So I'm assuming with a name like Sinelnikov, it was probably Russian.
Russian. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Eastern European.
Eastern European, sure.
Eastern European Jewish of
Yeah,
some form.
Ashkenazi Jewish, yeah.
But the other thing about both sides of his family is that his parents have either been disowned or disowned their extended family.
Yeah, exactly. I have no extended. It took literally 29 years for me to find my relatives on my dad's side, and because he claims they disowned him, he claims he disowned them, but I never had them in my childhood. I never had a paternal side.
And when your mom's dad died, how did you find out?
Yeah, when my maternal grandfather died, my mom called me and like, "Oh, hey, did you hear your grandpa died?" And I was like, "What?" And then my mom was like,
laughing.
They were laughing, yeah, and like they were basically like, "Oh yeah, if you want to go see his grave, they're doing it in like some other state like Alabama," and it was just very nonchalant. And
then they laughed at you when you were crying about it too.
Yeah, they were kind of like laughing that I was like crying about it. Because he wasn't a great guy. My grandfather, he really was kind of a dick. But like my mom has this.
Still your grandfather.
Exactly, it's still a loss. You know what I mean? Like I in fact in the last few months this year, I've had a few deaths in my family, and my mom or dad said, "Oh, you barely knew them," and like I'm just like, that was my great uncle Malcolm, who's from Liverpool, and like I loved him, and I've talked about this in other episodes where I'm just like, just because you may not have the same amount of experiences with somebody, it doesn't minimize the capacity of your love for them. You know what I mean?
Correct.
Exactly. So,
So.
And unresolved loss accumulates.
Yeah.
By the way.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most. I had the opportunity to shoot a film, a documentary that's currently unreleased, in a maximum security prison.
Oh wow.
And my colleague and I, we interviewed 24 lifers who had engaged in significant violent, aggressive behavior common thread between all of these beings was loss. Stacks of unresolved loss.
Wow.
And it was, how devastating that is to the soul. So, loss number 5 has loss number 1, 2, 3, and 4 in it.
Yeah. It builds.
So
And
it builds, accumulates across time.
And I think, so when I first met you and I said, oh, how are you going to fix my husband and me, right? And it's interesting how things have changed since February, because I talked to you later in that seminar, probably the next day, and said, I know what I need to do. We've been through it, blah, 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 blah. And what's interesting is that, like, we have organically worked on a lot since February, like maybe the most
we've ever worked
in the shortest period of time. And it hasn't been easy, but yet, like, even one of the weeks where that was the most difficult was a good week.
Yeah, I think that.
So, hang on. I'm going to keep interrupting you. Sorry.
Yes, it's okay. Story of my life.
So I think what I'm really excited about and trying to explain to my coworkers and people, and what I want to be explained here, since we have you on this, is
captive audience.
Yes. Well, partly so. In OT, there's always the famous question of, is it sensory or is it behavior? And I've been trying to learn in the last several months with my husband that it's not, is it sensory or behavior? It's just, what is the root of the behavior? His choices are not necessarily because he wants to make me angry. That's not what he wants at all, But how have you shown, and how did you teach us, that group of OTs, that, like, the behaviors we see, as unlikable as they are, the root cause is biology. So how do you explain that in a nutshell?
Okay.
Nutshell.
She's explaining it to a nutshell.
So when comes back to this beautiful, famous research study is where this all got me started. There was a very famous researcher who wanted to look at moms and babies' brains when they met for the first time. And this woman, her name is Geraldine Dawson, she looked at the brain images of moms who were in labor and delivery, and she found that they had a chemical, a neurochemical, that was very high in content in the brain, called oxytocin. And oxytocin is the chemistry of love. When you have that chemical floating around in your brain, it makes you feel magnificent. It also helps you focus your attention on a person. Okay? It connects you to that person. So this oxytocin flood that happens during labor and delivery prepares mom's brain to fall in love with baby. And then they looked at baby's brain at birth. So before they even cut the umbilical cord, they put on a little EEG cap, which measures your brainwave activity. And not much was happening in baby's brain at birth.
Yeah.
You need the outside womb environment to get all this cortical matter in your brain started.
Right.
So they cut the cord, and then they hand baby to mom, and within 20 seconds of being in mom's arms, baby's brain mirrored mom's.
Wow.
And their brainwave activity looked the same.
Holy shit.
Which is, to me, magical.
Yeah.
And all of this gleaming and beaming lights up the right side of the brain. So the right frontal cortex is the place that is the priority of the first 2 years of life. And this right side of the brain is all about nonverbals, the feelings of things. And so every every gleam and beam that a caregiver has with a child, there's this mirror image going on between these two brains. Well, what also makes this research so famous is moms who were chronically depressed, they had an altered brainwave pattern in the right side of their brain.
Huh.
And their babies look the same.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So it gets passed on from generation to generation, where these oxytocin patterns and these brainwave images look the same across multiple generations. But what's so important about this is what that right side of the brain does. This part of the brain that gets stimulated during these early developmental relationships is the CEO of your brain.
Oh.
It's the biggest, most important part of the brain, responsible for paying attention, impulse control, working memory, learning, all of the pieces.
I'm just like, oh shit.
We often call that, attention deficit disorder, developmental disability. It can happen as a result of limited or altered security in early infant attachment.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And
It's heavy.
it set the stage for how this happens. So let me add to that a little bit more. In 2012, I was invited to speak at a very prestigious conference in Canada for our First Nation people who have undergone so much colonization and trauma, because they are a people that have so much trauma and as a result multiple social challenges. And so my job at this particular conference was to talk about resilience. So I'm talking about, in the face of adversity, how come some people do well? Some people do well in the face of adversity because of their relationships.
Mm-hmm.
If you have one person that has your back, it is a huge factor of protection. And you can get that anywhere along the way in your life. So if you miss it in your early childhood, if it comes along somewhere in your life, this pattern can turn things around.
Wow.
So I'm speaking at this conference, and the first break comes up, and the producer of the conference says to me, "The next speaker isn't coming. Can you please talk for another 3 hours?"
Oh shit.
So I say, shit, and talk about, okay, I'm going to talk about attachment.
Okay.
I have these 3 videos. One is of a mom and a baby doing all the beautiful things that parents can do that feel like their mind is in the mind of the child. And there's a sense of delight and joy in the connection. And it's serve and return is what I call it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had a video of a mom and her daughter where mom was chronically depressed. And it looks like 2 ships passing in the night. There isn't enough animation in mom's face for baby to see or latch on to that expression. So it's kind of like, and the baby is gazing around, looking for, where's my mom? And then you can notice that mom notices that baby is not with her. And you see the sadness in her face. And then you see baby immediately cheer up mom. Take on this role. And this can be as early as 2 weeks old.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Where baby launches into this, I'm the parent who looks after the care. Become the parent as the baby.
The cheer up
lighting up
mom.
my mom to make sure that I'm taken care of.
Wow.
My third video was an dad who was a chronic you see Dad with these grippy fingers pick up his son. The son does this with his hands, pushes them away, arches his back, turns his head, and then Dad goes, "Hey, come on, let's play." He feels the rejection and responds to the rejection with anger. And then you see the little boy collapse into compliance.
Huh.
These are powerful videos. So I was finally finished talking, and this man comes walking up the aisle towards me. And he is somebody that I didn't recognize.
Okay.
But you could feel in the room that there was this, someone important is walking by. So I'm watching this guy come right up to my face and say, you just changed my life, and you're probably going to work with me for the rest of yours. And this is a very famous Canadian National Hockey League champion who was well known for his addiction behavior in Canada, who had also talked about publicly his sexual abuse by his coach in junior hockey. Mm-hmm. Well, the next thing he said, which is the part of why I wanted to tell you this story, is he said to me, "This changed my life because when I look at the video of the mom and the baby in that beautiful, loving, connected space, I couldn't feel that anywhere in my body," he said. "I thought the other two videos were normal."
Wow.
His mom was chronically depressed, and his dad was a chronic violent alcoholic, and that was his norm. And he said, "I can see it's not my fault." So when Amanda asked the question, why do we do what we do? Our biology is so shaped by the experiences that we have. And these early experiences wire us at a very unconscious level to respond to the world in the way that we do.
Wow. Jesus.
It's heavy.
Yeah, that's
right?
really heavy. Like I'm like trying to hold my shit together right now.
So in learning that back in February, it's allowed me and allowed us to work on a lot of those things. But then in those moments too, like because of my biology and your biology, I still fall back on the same reaction that I did several years ago.
Which is?
But that's completely understandable.
Right.
Because when we get triggered, we are triggered at an implicit level without consciousness.
Right.
And the fight, flight, freeze response kicks in an eighth of a millisecond.
Yeah.
And I think that was the other piece that learning at your class was, and I'm going to say it wrong, so you can correct me. Was it that the amygdala is a sensory organ, and that is what causes the fight, flight, or freeze response? So sensory information comes in, but you can't use logic or words to get it out.
Correct. So this amygdala, where all of our emotions are created, that structure relies on sensations to inform it about what's safe and what's dangerous in my environment.
Yes.
Right. I get it.
And so that's touch, sound, movement, but also facial expressions.
Yes, I forget that one.
And vocal tones and gestural. Those are also sensory cues.
Yeah, I have a really bad. I've been told I have that what is called resting bitch face. Like my like I can't hide my emotion, like my facial expressions at all. Like there'll be times, or my tone of voice. Like it's just she can, and maybe it's because she's my wife, but like she can like I think everybody at this point can tell like when I'm upset or just even when I'm trying to hide my facial expression. Like I just can't do it.
He has no skill to manipulate anybody into thinking things differently than what.
Yeah.
He can't be anything but transparent.
Well, nobody's perfect.
But no, of course not. And that is a right orbital frontal cortex function.
Wow.
Inhibiting
Right.
the same brain part that is developed through that gleaming and beaming. In the absence of that gleaming and beaming, you will have hypersensitivity to nonverbal cues that are uninhibited, and you will have difficulty inhibiting your own nonverbal cues.
Right.
Whereas me,
Yeah.
I can hold it all together most of the time, cover it up, and then at some point in time, a little pin comes along and it all explodes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, wow. This has been, wow. This is great. This is amazing. Like I'm blown away, but I also know that you've got places to go and people to see, right? And so I don't want to hold you up too much longer. But
I was gonna say, if I could ask you for one thing.
3 more hours.
No,
Just kidding.
well,
Just kidding.
my other favorite concept from your seminar was the creating a safe space for people. So I think that's the one concept that I would love people to be able to take away from this conversation too.
Yeah.
So what happens is that when we feel secure, which is a regulated state, where thoughts and feelings have equal value, that came from having someone put their mind in our mind.
Yes.
Which neither dismisses your emotion nor exaggerates your emotion. So, for example, if someone is distressed and I come along and I say, at least, you've got your brother over there, he's going to help you. Or you say to me, I just had a miscarriage. And I say, well, at least you can get pregnant. These are the words of Brené Brown. I am dismissing your suffering.
Yeah.
But it comes from my inability to tolerate suffering. Or if I say, tell me the whole story. I want all the juicy details, right? Then I am exaggerating the emotion. So I'm not creating a space for you to experience your own self. I interrupt that process. But if I can hold space, which is like being a present, observable, mindful witness of your experience, I communicate to you that you are received and understood.
Right.
And that allows the person to learn to tolerate their own feelings.
Wow.
Well, thank you.
Oh man, thank you. Yeah. I mean, I can't say I'm fixed, but I mean, I'm definitely. I got fixed when she came. I'm just kidding. Anyway, but no, oh my God, thank you so much for being on the show, and just taking the time to talk with us. And I thought for sure I was gonna be like, what the fuck is she talking about? But no, I really thank you so much. It is very enlightening, and it's very very it's mind blowing. And thank you. And I hope you have a wonderful dinner.
Thank you.
And Amanda.
And I hope that if anyone, whoever is listening,
Yeah.
that this plants a few seeds
Yes.
Yeah.
in people's minds and hearts.
That's the purpose of
that
this show.
None of us are ever fixed.
Nope.
Yeah.
But we are all doing the best we can with what we have.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, and yeah, and you have a wonderful evening, and again, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Wow, guys, that oh my God, that was some heavy shit there, and and I'll be honest, some of it got me very emotional because I think I've touched on this. We can't have children, and hearing some of that stuff about how the baby and the mom, like it hit me. It really hit me, and it granted it doesn't take much to get me emotional, but like that it hit me deep, and I'm really I'm pretty good at being sarcastic and playing things off, but I mean that shit's fascinating, and we were extremely lucky to have Kim Barthel on our show tonight, and I'm so glad that my wife was able to participate, even though she's
And I was
mean
gonna say
to me.
one of the things I cut myself off because we had limited time with her. But one of the things I want to point out before you close is that it's true that like Hal and I still have our biological responses to those sensory inputs. He doesn't hear me because I'm yelling from upstairs, and he asks me to repeat myself, and I increase the volume of my voice, and along with that he usually goes, well, you don't have to get angry, and that's his biological response to a raised voice, right? It's not because I'm now ticked that he didn't turn on the sprinkler or something the first time, but I'm getting off topic because I'm also just in La La Land because I just got to see Kim Barthel on Skype.
It was like an orgasmic experience.
But part of the key that I want to say is that Hal and I still have those biological responses. However, it's what we do after those biological responses occur is what matters. And some nights we can stop ourselves in the middle of a sentence and turn it around. And some nights we have the whole argument, and it's not until the next day that we come and, apologize. But we always recognize, I think, what went wrong eventually.
Right. So, I mean, here's the thing, guys. I mean, nobody, like Kim said, nobody gets fixed. I mean, there's no way to fix people. I mean, there's definitely a way to help people, move forward in life and past trauma and learn to live with it. They're like it's like scar tissue. But we live with it, and we have to carry it, and we have to do it one day at a time.
Anonymous.